So I suppose this evening is a continuation, in a sense, of the workshop that was done over the weekend, the art of meditation, which is also subtitled The Game of Guiding Thought. And I'll repeat some often understood ideas about the psyche, the mind, because all of our spiritual effort really to do with controlling only one thing, the mind. And we can even say it's your mind, even though in other places I say there's only one mind, cosmic mind. Now, what disturbs this mind? Well, there are internal things, immediately internal and immediately external to us, circumstances which are disturbing the mind. We wake up in the morning, we go and enter into our environment, and the common human interpretation of the environment is I'm in a certain location, in a certain place, and my whole environment consists of interactions of other people, social interactivities, whether I know them, whether I don't know them. If I know them, then it's can be a little bit more difficult. And I'm thrust into an environment that I feel I have to struggle against, and this is the common view of things. But I remind you of something we started our meditation process off over a weekend. And that was Joel Goldsmith, that famous, wonderful spiritual author, writing in his book, The Art of Meditation. And there he gives this definition that meditation is a song of gratitude. That God is here, God is now, God is love. And he's not ashamed to use the word God. Swami Vivekananda also defends the use of the word God as well. But words are words. And so if you use a word, maybe you have to remove potentially misunderstandings and try to define what does it mean. It means that principle in you that is loving enough to dispense grace. So that God is love, God is here, God is now, God is love. It is resting in God's bosom, the Lord's bosom. It is holding his hand on the journey. He continues. What a beautiful, beautiful expression. And the beauty of that whole concept is this: it's not a struggle. And so all spiritual effort can start off as a kind of situation where I stand in a place and I want something. Now, there's a value in that because a certain amount of discipline is required. Prayer, even prayer that asks for things, has a certain value. But sooner or later, after probably a number of years, we realize that asserting that we want is equivalent to asserting as well, in parallel to it, a statement, but you know what, I haven't got a bracketed thing going on like that. And we don't really get anything anywhere. And we wonder, and we possibly could lose our faith until and unless we realize that meditation, which won't give us anything, prayer, which won't give us anything, unless all of that is interpreted in a different way, that it is accessing your own inner glory, which is already there, that it is already there, that it is already now, and that it is love. Now, what is love? Well, love is a free-flowing thing. There's a loving investor in all of us that is keeping our heart pumping, keeping our diaphragm moving, keeping the cells active. We're completely unaware of all of this. Nobody consciously stops and says, oh, I wonder if my heart is still going. Of course, you can direct your awareness to the heart separately if you have a want to do that. You can feel your pulse. But generally speaking, we walk and move, assuming that breath will take place, assuming that the heart will pump, assuming that the legs will move, assuming that food will be digested, assuming that hair will grow, assuming that we will wake up in the morning, assuming that we will sleep at night, assuming that the moon will come out in its season, in its rotation, in its lunar months, and the sun will shine and beam, and plants will grow, and flowers will grow, and seasons will be there. All of this we take for granted. But is it warranted to take all this for granted? Is it not an opportunity for us to pause, align our attention with a sense of deep, deep felt love in return, gratitude in return, loving God because God is lovable, was a free supplier of all of this, not judging, not demanding anything. Now, one of the desires that we have universally is a desire for peace. And the same formula, beginning formula, I want it, I don't have it. And it's not difficult to see that what disturbs our mind is getting information and news about a world in riot, difficulties in different parts of the world, and with a distant historical memory, maybe directly or maybe from our parents or their grandparents. Oh, you see, there were two devastating wars that engaged the whole of the world in the last century. And we can't understand why such a slaughter could take place on such a massive basis. And then when we research history a little bit more, we see, well, it happened in previous generations too. And not only that, but for different causes. And what was the difficulty? So, is there a formula where we can access peace in ourselves and then also be a beaming light of peace for others? Blessed are the peacemakers, Jesus says. Is there some opportunity for us to be peacemakers? Not by demonstrating on the streets, not by speeches, but by accessing peace itself. And where will we find it? Is there such a thing? And so, of course, meditation really is that art whereby we take all these disturbances. That means all the cravings have to go. Cravings disturb the mind. All our wants, all our desires has to go. And for those to go, we have to make a whole new evaluation of our environment. We have to transport it into a heavenly realm. We have to use the art of our own imagination and see there and feel the inherent love and beauty that is already flowing, what we summarily call grace. Divine grace is flowing. We don't have to access it separately. We don't have to requisition it. We don't have to do any discipline to get it. It is already there. So therefore, that being, that divine being, that fullness is already here, already now. And its characteristic is a flowing love that comes out as the opportunity for us to attune to the glory of the divine. Why don't we do it? It's because we don't see the world as God sees it. We have to sit on God's throne and beam away and see it as He saw it. God made the world and saw it was good. Us poor things think it's bad. And then we have to struggle to make it good. No, not necessary. And even a person sitting in a cave, Swami Vivekananda recalls meeting the great, great saint Pabhari Baba. Pabhari Baba was known for sitting in an isolated place, not engaging with anybody or anything. It's told that one day a robber came, stole from him, put everything in a bag, but then he was concerned. He thought the sage will catch him and punish him. And so he drops the bag and runs away. Bhabhari Baba picks the bag up, runs after him, until finally the poor man has no other opportunity. He has to stop panting with breath. And Bhabhari Baba gives him the bag. He says, this belongs to you. You wanted it. You should have it. That generosity of spirit, a different way of thinking. The regular way of thinking not really being satisfactory long term, not even medium term. It's not even a good formula for immediate action. So we have to learn a lesson. What is the formula? How will we change it? And it begins with something remarkable. It begins with silence. It begins with making sure that these waves become minimal and ultimately not at all. Now, the unfortunate aspect of making this statement will be people misinterpret it as dullness or something like a blank or something like a sleep. And it's an example of where two extremes look the same. Now, Bhavari Bhava was asked by Swami Vivekananda, I said, I don't see, you're a sage. He's used to his Ramakrishna. You're a sage. Why aren't you doing some good for the world, uplifting humanity? So much poverty and ignorance all around. Why aren't you doing something about it? Bhavari Baba says, equivalent to, don't you think that somebody sitting with all goodwill will affect everybody, will affect the whole world, of course? Now there are a number of monastic orders whose vow is silence. Of course, it's recorded. A man entered such a monastic movement, and they were allowed to speak once a year. So at Christmas time, they had the luxury of saying some words to the abbot. And the newcomer, the first year, he really says to the abbot, my bed is really very, very hard. Is there something we can do about it? My back is aching. Now that's his sentence finished for another year. Next year, says to the abbot, well, the food is not that nourishing, and I find myself extremely hungry. That's his statement for the year. The next year, he starts opening his mouth, and the abbot says, you really have to leave. Since you've been here, you've done nothing but complain. So all his silence was all wasted simply on account of his mind. What was he meditating all this time? Oh, the food doesn't suit me. I think I'll tell the abbot, but I have to wait for one full year to do it. The bed is hard and my back is aching. I have no opportunity since I took a vow of silence. Now, the practice of silence, Mona, is a wonderful, wonderful practice because it gives us the opportunity to reflect, to turn ourselves inwards and stop the noise. And you'll soon recognize it's a very difficult thing to be silent. Not many people are at ease with silence. Now, when I say not at ease with silence, the opposite of silence would be some noise, and most people think this is audial noise. And that is true, because we live in an environment which is intrinsically noisy unless you're living in the countryside. We are told, and I have not experienced it myself, that if you go into the Sahara Desert, the silence is just astonishing. And it is so blissful. And I don't know if anybody in modern times has truly, truly experienced this level of silence. You'll notice that when we go on retreat, it's a silent retreat. And there's a value to that. There's a reason for that. Because you have the opportunity of removing all distractions, audial distractions to start with. You have the opportunity to be in an environment where the noise is much less. And instead of noise, there are sounds. Even in the external world, there will be sounds. And if you tune your attention to this, it's an exercise in awareness and concentration, a way of engaging all the senses and establishing much, much more joy and much more appreciation. Much more appreciation is given. During the meditation weekend, we had the opportunity to take a walk. And the instruction was, and some of you may have done it with me also, that you do a mindful walk. That means that you engage all the senses one after the other. Because to engage the senses all at one time, the body is not designed like this. When we say the body, we're really talking of the mind. because the organs are all internal. When the external eye closes, the internal eye remains awake. And it's in the dreams that the internal organs play their part. And even when you close your eyes and imagine and do some daydreaming, it's the internal organs which are working. So the external organs are simply connecting one to an objective world that sometimes gives us a lot of difficulties. How to deal with this? Consciousness, our birthright, flowing through these external instruments, going to the external world, is giving us a trigger for an internal reaction which expresses itself externally in the form of speech, in the form of reactive thought, in the form possibly of action, and some of it is good and some of it is not. But all of it is endorsing the absolute reality of the world, and the world is not absolutely real. It is relatively real, and it is only there in relation to our interpretation. Our interpretation is only there in relation to the way our instruments, our sense organs are designed to interpret it. These are the windows through which we look. A blind person has one of these faculties missing. A deaf person has one of these faculties missing. Their world is different. Some people who are blind from birth will have no spatial awareness. And when sight is sometimes restored, it's a kind of new experience for them, complete new experience for them. A child will have no spatial awareness, not like the adult. When you see them draw, the sky is above. It's a kind of abstract idea. It's not as we see it. So we have to learn these things. In other words, we have to fit our interpretations and understandings within the framework of these limited dimensional areas open to us only through the sense organs. But the real sense organs are internal. They are a part of the mental field, and they operate even when the eyes are closed. Now today, the level of noise is very high. The level of traffic noise is high. The level of air traffic noise is high. And so people have gotten used to noise. Noise is equivalent to normal life. So when a person is in a car, they will have to engage the senses. They'll have to listen to something. And I know you've all experienced a car drawing up at a traffic light, and all you hear is boom, 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 a big thud at the highest possible volume. Now you see that boom, boom going on is a replication of the heartbeat. And how long can you sustain it and be calm? That's a question. So blanking off the external noise as much as possible gives us the opportunity to attend to another kind of noise. That is all the internal traffic, all the humblings and bumblings of the mind, all the different impressions, and thoughts and fears and doubts, and all the things that come up in the mind that are fed in from this external environment. And they run pell-mell unless we are able to streamline them and control them. And the whole of our spiritual practice will be to do that, to quiet the mind. That is why, of course, in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the aphorisms which operate as a textbook for the practice of concentration, it is told, yoga chitti vritti nirodha. That is, all these waves in an environment like a lake called chitta, pure a field of consciousness. All of that has to be restrained, has to be controlled, has to be reduced. And once we reduce it to a level where there is a small vibration, and then having done even more than that, we will find that there is something behind it that witnessed all of these things, something that is steady, something that never moves, something that never vibrates, and yet its presence gives rise to all the other manifested things that we see, all the vibrations and their forms. It is its presence that enables it. But it is also the most deepest, profound silence, and we can only really access it through silence. And silence means that thoughts, words, and deeds have to coincide with the atmosphere of silence. And that is where we'll find the deepest peace. So, silence and the practice of silence, the practice of reducing the noise, the internal noise level, gives rise to one thing, and that is called prayer. Now, what is prayer? You may think that sounds like another noise. By prayer, we don't mean this request, I want this, please give me that. By prayer, we mean listening. And it can only be heard in the silence, in the internal silence. This is where we hear the voice of God. And it comes as an inspiration. It is said that Beethoven, his form of music was somehow divinely inspired. In the words of the great composer and conductor, musician Bernstein, he says, it's as if he had, every note had to be the same note, had to be the right note. It's as if he had a private line to God, he says. Where he got it, nobody knows. Before, nobody had it. Afterwards, I'm not sure if anybody had it. And this is what we call inspiration. Where do we get it? We get it from a specific area of consciousness that has been described as superconsciousness. If we read Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga, we'll see him coming up with this. There's the conscious mind. And then there's the subconscious mind, that is conscious experiences, learning experience goes into a separate deposit account, and that's called the unconscious mind. That's what bubbles up again into the conscious mind and creates disturbances. And the unconscious has a suction, a pulling power. It draws things in toward us. And if it is not controlled, then what? So where are these waves? These waves are in the subconscious. This is the area that has to be controlled. We cannot do it directly, though. Let us call this the habit level. In order to deal with it, we have to raise up another habit, a counter habit, one which has no selfishness, one which is able to access the most imaginative, beautiful impressions, scenes, experiences in our memories. Everybody can raise that up. Everybody can keep that alive. So one of the practical things that I had told, keep a list. Every day add to it. Count your blessings. Write them down. Make sure that you record your level of appreciation. Make sure that your mind is filled with the highest creative, artistic, and beautiful forms you can imagine. Now you may say that this also is a vibration, a series of vibrations. Yes, indeed. But it is a counter vibration. It cancels out all the damaging vibrations that are there, namely the rajasic one, that is the vibration, if you like, the thought vibration, which is only dedicated toward power and pleasure, these two things. And you'll see it's orientated around this egocentric position, which really is our great enemy. Our whole Enneagram workshop is orientated around this idea of identifying this specific aspect and how to deal with it and how to actually get rid of its compulsive elements, its dangerous elements, its evil elements, its enemy aspect, and make it into a friend. Make it as an open channel where divine grace can flow through to everyone. Do that. Try to transform it. There's another way of saying to do that, you are controlling the mind. Control the mind. Control your thought. We, not being thought, have the capacity to take the rod of attention and steer it in any chosen direction. Steer to the highest level, the noblest level you can find. And when you arrive there, tweak it a little higher and refine it to make it finer and more glorious, until you are able to access that still, quiet place that we call prayer, that intimate time with the most beloved, where we listen to the sweet voice of the divine. Not the voice of our own mind, not the voice of disturbance, not the internal conversation with maybe somebody else, but the deepest level. Be a listener and make it a blissful, intimate experience. Time alone with the beloved, in our most intimate area, that is the mind itself, which is the sitting room of the Lord. And there we spend time. So silence will lead to prayer. And then what will prayer do? Prayer will lead us to faith. What do we mean by faith? It means the more we have that quiet moment, the more we engage in silent prayerfulness, the more we carry that silent prayerfulness into our organic waking life, then the more we can see the reality of things, the more we can trust things. So, what does Krishna say in terms of this process? Well, he says, Samkalpa prabhavan kamam tyaktva sarvan esheshataha manasaive indriya gramam viniyamya samantataha. We have to abandon what? Without reserve, without clinging on to it, without attachment, all desires born of sankalpa, that is the constant habitual round, the same formula that has been tried and tested to fail ultimately, and completely curbing in by the mind all the senses from all sides. And so he goes on, with the intellect set in firmness, sane sane unparamed bhutya, let him attain quietude. How do you attain this silence, this quietude? Little by little. It's like turning the volume down bit by bit. With the mind then fixed on the self, fixed on the glorious God, fixed on this eternal element that is always there shining. Let him not think of anything else. This is the meditation. And by so, not think of anything else, what is this equivalent to? It's equivalent to prayer. And by whatever cause the wavering and steady mind wanders away and vibrates some more, you can curb it from that and subjugate it solely to the self again. Bring it back. You do it patiently, with purity of mind. And then what's the result of it? Supreme bliss comes to that person whose mind is perfectly calm. Peace comes. Now we have peace. Whose passions are quieted, who has become one with the Supreme that we call Brahman, that Absolute, and who is freed from taint of good and evil, constantly engaging the mind, the practitioner that is you and me, who is free from taint, attains with ease, naturally, the infinite bliss of contact with Brahman, with no struggle, with ease, without any concern. Oh, my meditation wasn't good. Oh, I wish I could do better. Oh, I give up. It's impossible. Oh, my mind is so disturbed. Now, in order to do that, we have to reduce our anxiety through the day. We have to engage in that silence. We have to access that central core from time to time. Whenever we feel this agitation coming up, we can resort to that calm central area within us, that central core. And there we'll find complete silence and complete rest also. So where have we gone? We have gone from silence to prayer to faith. And this faith comes because it comes from a realization that we are always looked after. We have the opportunity to surrender ourselves completely, and that's part of the process. The surrender to the divine within the heart, and we can go beyond all our difficulties and limitations. But surrender, though it's easy to think about, to conceive, is also not so easy a process. It requires giving up all this sense of ego and all our fears, all our desires, because they all go with it. They are all baggage. They're all accompaniments to the egoistic journey. And to facilitate this, surrender is added to all your practice, such as chanting divine names, such as japa, such as any devotional forms of worship. They can also be practiced along with knowledge-oriented techniques, like self-inquiry. There's a wonderful story that Swami Vivekananda quotes about Buddha. And you see, a lot of people, a lot of young people around Buddha were so impressed that they gave up ceremonial things and became monks. If you become a monk, maybe you're not a priest, and all ritual and so on and so forth, maybe you don't do that. And that was the case with the Sangha of Buddha. Now you see what happened was the gods were deprived, because it is only the ceremonies, the sacrifices, the pujas, the worship and all of that, all the ritual things that sustain the life of the gods. We have to understand what we mean by gods. We mean all the forces of nature are sustained by our thought. And our thought is endorsed and made to crystallize through this action. The action underlines the intention and the thought. And the thought will always be for our benefit. It won't have any generosity with it. It might even be for the good of the world, but it is this world. And also for the reward afterwards, heaven afterwards. Right now, there are many religions, let's call it this, that are appealing for funds for refugees and things throughout the world on the basis that if you give something, even just a few euros, then you are sure of your reward in heaven. But you see, is this freedom? It's not freedom. It's simply going into a holiday camp, postmortem holiday camp, not really solving your problems. It's not freedom from good and evil. It's not freedom from virtue and vice. It's not freedom from pleasure and pain syndrome. It's not freedom from slavery, whether it's here or hereafter. Anyway, all the deities get together. They say, we have to destroy this Buddha. Otherwise, we'll be destroyed ourselves. So they all come to him and say, look, unfortunately, people are joining, our sacrifice is less, and we're in trouble. So we want to make one great fire, and can you recommend a holy spot? And he said, you do it here. All right, you lie down, and we'll make a big fire there. And their idea was, we'll destroy you. And they could not destroy him. They could not destroy the great Buddha, even though they created such a wonderful, huge, huge sacrificial fire. Why? Because nobody can conquer purity. And that's the moral of the story behind it. So, if you are established in oneness, says Krishna, worships me, you worshipping me, dwelling in all beings, that person lives in me, whatever may be their mode of life. If you see me everywhere, he sees me and he puts it personally. Other texts such as Kathopanishad, Ishopanishad would say, he sees the self in all beings. Now he's saying, Use your artistic imagination. Contact me as a person in your devotion and your love. This is called prayer. He who sees me everywhere and sees all in me, he never becomes lost to me, nor I become lost to him. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati. But is it easy? Well, I don't see how it can be kept up, because the mind is not quiet. The mind is restless, says Arjun, on behalf of all of us. Yes, that is true. It's restless, it's turbulent, it's strong, it's obstinate. It seems to me hard to control as the wind. Yes, Sri Bhagavan Ovacha, he agrees, doubtless. The mind is restless, hard to control. But by practice and non-attachment, it can be controlled. What do we mean by practice? We have to practice this silence, this prayerfulness. Prayerfulness, from it arises faith. That is trust. Once we see God in all beings, then we know that God is in all beings. Once we see that that is behind the wind blowing, that is behind the breath that echoes it, that is behind the drumbeat of the heart, that is behind all the renewal and vitality of the cells, that is behind all the organic machinery, it is behind the complexity of the whole universe that contributes toward you and me living for such a short period of time with such a short opportunity to transform it. If you want to know what is the glory of this divine being, you don't have to look very far. Your own body will tell the story. Your environment will tell the story. The wind and the sun and the fire and the air and the earth and the water will tell the story. The glory of it all is self-evident, but you have to tune the attention into it. You have to tune the mind into it. So yes, by practice of what? Practice of attaching your mind to the eternal. And detachment, practice of learning to detach the mind from other things so that you are able to switch subjects quickly and go back and fix your mind on whatever you want to fix it on. This is the secret of concentration. So faith, what does it mean? It means I am looked after, I am cared for, I am loved. The future path is set out for me. The angels are making the crooked path straight for me. That is, all the divine forces are arranging things. That means I can let go of anxiety. I can let go of doubt. I can let go of all the little things which are creating this bubbling sense of disturbance, these waves in the mind. It's impossible to find God outside of ourselves, says Swami Vivekananda. Our own souls contribute all the divinity that is outside of us. We are the greatest temple. The objectification is only a faint imitation of what we see within ourselves. Concentration of the powers of the mind is our only instrument to help us see God. And if you know one soul that is your own, you know all souls past, present, and to come. The will concentrates the mind. Certain things excite and control this will, such as reason, love, devotion, breathing. The concentrated mind is a lamp that shows us every corner of the soul. Truth cannot be partial, it's for the good of all. And finally, in perfect rest and peace, meditate upon it, concentrate your mind upon it, make yourself one with it. Then no speech is needed. Silence will carry the truth. Do not spend your energy in talking, but meditate in silence. Don't let the rush of the outside world disturb you. When your mind is in the highest state, you are unconscious of it. Accumulate power in silence and become a dynamo of spirituality. What a beautiful, beautiful statement Swami Vivekananda gives. Then it is no doubt that this faith will lead us to peace. Everyone should take time or some time to retire to a quiet spot for meditation, says Joe Goldsmith. During this period, he should turn his thought to God, consider his understanding of God, and search out a deeper understanding of the nature of spirit and its formations. I should say, if you're allergic to the word or concept of God, it's okay. You insert something else. It's only a word. But by God, of course, we mean that eternal personal entity that is responsible for the rhythm of the universe, the evenness of it, the plan of it, the design of it, the creation of it, the keeping it going, the play of it, the drama of it, manifesting itself in seemingly fragmented ways everywhere. That is what we mean. And it is your own internal inner self. So we should turn our thoughts to that in this quiet period and consider understanding what this is. Search out a deeper understanding of the nature of spirit and its formations. This is the road, this is the channel, this is the journey, internal, called meditation. You should be careful not to take any of your ills or other problems into your meditation. Otherwise, you'll find it will all be occupied with that. This particular period, whatever period you set aside, is dedicated. You begin by dedicating and consecrating this space and the time to thinking about this most beloved being and this being's universe. As God is the mind and soul of every individual, it is possible for all of us to be tuned into this kingdom of heaven and receive the divine messages and assurances and benefits of the infinite love. The grace of God which we perceive or receive in these periods of meditation or prayer becomes tangible to us in the fulfilling of our so-called human needs. You see, we think we have to address our needs. That creates anxiety. We feel there's no one to help us. But accessing this infinite, invisible, this infinite love, this grace, which we receive in these periods of meditation, that, or in meditation or prayer, in this sense, meditation is inward prayer. It becomes tangible to us in the fulfilling of all our so-called human needs. By itself, without asking, we are looked after. As if by magic, all our thought is expressed in and by the infinite love. And if we don't open our consciousness to receive spiritual understanding, we must not be surprised if we don't experience spiritual good in our daily living. There's no other way to open our consciousness in the realm of soul than through this silence, this meditation or prayer, through contemplating the things of the divine. And then he quotes, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, and there we arrive at peace." All through the days, our thoughts are centered on the activities of human experience. Things like family cares, duties, earning of livelihood, social and community affairs, not to mention political affairs and world affairs. And it's not natural then, is it not natural then that at some time during the day or evening, we should take time off from all of that? We should retire to our inner consciousness. It is the temple of the divine. And there we should dwell on the things of the divine, since we gave a time allocation to all these other things. Above all, we must develop the sense of receptivity so that we can become ever more aware of the very presence of God in His holy temple, which is our own consciousness, in the secret place of the Most High, which is the Holy of Holies, which is our very own inner consciousness. We receive there illumination, guidance, wisdom, spiritual power. In quietness and in confidence, shall be your strength. So, as we learn to listen to the still small voice, the spirit within opens our consciousness to the immediate awareness of spiritual good. We are filled with the divine energies of spirit. We are illumined with the light of the soul. We are refreshed with the water of life and fed with the meat which doesn't perish. This spiritual food is never rationed to those who learn to meet God within the temple of their being. So let us look at the process. Silence. Silence leads to profound experience called prayer. Prayer leads to faith. Faith leads to service. And service, what does service mean? It means the spontaneous will to uplift, to serve that divinity in all beings. And if we all do that, what will we find? We will find peace within and without. All wars will cease, of course, if people do this. But people like wars because they don't like silence. So this is the way we can use a formula which goes from silence ultimately to peace, and the step-by-step process of silence leading to prayer, leading to faith, leading to service, and that ultimately yields peace. And talking of peace, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, peace, peace unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.